Hey guys, it's been a while since I posted any content on Magic, so I decided to go ahead and make a video today to kind of talk about Modern. I did start going out to play a couple of games here and there, updated my deck. Kind of want to show you guys off or show you the updates I did to my deck, talk about some games I played, and yeah, basically just kind of give you a small update here. Um, and yeah, and just kind of ramble on basically, right? So, yeah, if you don't know, this deck is going to be, or this deck profile is going to be on my Jeskai control deck for the modern format. Last I played was, I can't remember, like right before they banned the One Ring, I believe. And after that, I haven't played since they banned One Ring, and then they banned Grinding Station, I think is the card that they banned, or Breach. I think it was Breach actually. So Breach was banned. Final Fantasy set has just came out. It didn't. Final Fantasy doesn't really have a huge impact on Modern, I don't think. It's mostly a lower powered set that's more focused on I would say Commander because there's a bunch of legendaries in it and there's a bunch of collectible cards. So I think the set is cool. I think it's very collectible, very cool. I just didn't think anything in that set would be very strong in my particular deck. So nothing from that set is used in this deck. But I did play uh, last Monday or yesterday, which was Monday, and I didn't really see any new cards yet. Granted, it's only been kind of like the pre-release or so. But yeah, regardless, I don't think there's maybe Fire Magic and like a couple other cards, niche cards I can think that would be used in the format. But outside of that, not much else. All right, so let's talk about the deck itself here, right? So I played I think 7 games or so of this particular deck recently. So like went to 2 different locals or 2 different days of locals, one yesterday and the week before that. Played against Goblin, Belcher, Neoform, and something else I forget. Um, Let me think here. I think it was Goblin, Belcher, Neoform, and I think uh, don't remember what the other deck was. Sorry, there's like 1 or 2 other decks I played against, but I don't quite remember. But yeah, so I only lost 1 game, and that was 1 game to Belcher because I got Blood Moon. But I did play against the same person, but we played different weeks. First week I lost him. Second week I won. He was playing the Monored Belcher deck with the Dragon combo. I forget the Storm Dragon that like creates a copy of itself for every when storm count is high. Forget what it does, or if I forget exactly what the dragon's name was, but it would get like Bitter Reunion, and then you get haste, and then attacks you and blah blah blah. But yeah, so played against that. That's the only game I lost was just got Blood Moon. This week I got Blood Moon again. Lost. Well, game 1 I won. Game 2 I got Blood Moon. Lost. Game 3 I also got Blood Moon. He actually dropped 2 Blood Moon and a defense shield, planetary defense, or I think what was the card. Either way, I was able to break that board, clear away both Blood Moons and the defense shield, and then just went from there. So, yeah, pretty cool. I think I did a pretty good job navigating that game, and then winning from there. So let's talk about the deck itself, since I kind of I've been rambling on too much here. Okay, so first card here, we got the 2 Prismatic Ending. With this particular build, I decided to take away Leyline Binding. Leyline Binding is still a good card. It's just very demanding on your mana and the way you have to navigate getting what card you want, and it just caused a lot of conflicts, which sometimes I kind of got a little annoyed by, right? So sometimes you want to fetch for your your Trinome, but sometimes you also need to cast a spell on turn 1, and it just caused a lot of different mana issues. So I decided to just completely do away with Land Binding and go more of a traditional mana build. or mana base, I guess, and that way I would have less issues. So prismatic ending in this particular deck, at one point I was playing 3, then I cut it down to 2. I also had maybe 4 different color sources in the deck to maybe cast this on X equals to, 3. I end up just doing it to X equals to 2 now. So we're purely Jeskai. We can only ever exile maximum CMC 3 at the moment. You could add a Trinome in here to make this X equals 4 for CMC 4. But I felt like that wasn't necessary anymore, especially with the ring being gone. You're not really going to be targeting anything CMC 4 and higher. So, yeah, so for the most part, we don't really need the colors to be that high. I found that this is still pretty nice to get rid of some, random artifacts. It's just redundancy, right? So this card, along with Wrath of the Skies, kind of helps keep the artifacts, keep some of the enchantments under control. Especially in the early game, sometimes you don't have enough energy to fire off the Wrath, or enough mana to fire off the Wrath. So this prismatic ending kind of helps with that. Kind of helps keeps like maybe the 1 mana creature like Ragavan under control. Maybe your opponent has a Bowmaster, or they have some sort of enchantment or artifact that you want to get rid of. Yeah, it's just there to kind of help control that. But it's not our main form of removal, so we're only just playing 2. Okay, we have 2 Spell Snares, and then Spell Snare has been pretty good. Helped me win a couple of games. Sometimes it can be dead, but for the most part, there's always decks. Almost every deck has a 2 mana spell. So unless you're playing Cascade or something like that. But yeah, for the most part, just the two snares there. With this particular build, I actually focus a lot more on counter magic. Most Jeskai control decks, they don't really do that much with counter magic. They play maybe 4 counter spells and 2 snares and maybe 1 or 2 force negation, and that's about it. I decided to go pretty heavy on blue mana in this particular deck, so you'll see later. I'll actually just take away my mana source right here, but you'll see later what I mean when I build this particular deck to feature heavily in blue. So, all right, for our other package here, we are playing the energy package, so we're playing the 3 tunes, 4 Galvanic, and just 3 Wrath of the Skies. They're basically just to help us to store up energy. No one's really playing Sunfire. I forgot the that creature that used to not allow you to get energy. No one's really playing that card anymore because since the Raptor was banned, energy hasn't seen crazy amounts of play. And so that makes our deck a lot better because no one's really signing that card in anymore. So it makes our energy package really, really good. So yeah, so basically we're going to store up a bunch of energy. Basically, we're almost always trying to cast Wrath of the Skies for 2 mana. 2 mana board wipe is basically what we're trying to usually do. And that makes this deck really, really good. It's almost so hard to stop this card, especially if you have this and a counter spell to back it up. You can board wipe your opponent and then have a counter spell to back it up. That way your opponent can't they'll have a hard time reestablishing the board. So from my experience, it seems like a really good way to build out the deck here. For the other 2 mana cards, we're just playing 2 snaps for counter spells. Snapcaster is still pretty good. Helped me win a couple of games. I definitely love going, tune a narrative, snap, and then cast tune a narrative again from the graveyard. That really just creates an engine there, a small engine. Or, snap counterspell is always good. Snap Galvanic Discharge is always good. There's just so many things that we can do with Snapcaster in this particular deck. A bunch of different spells we can cast that just gives us value. Granted, sometimes our opponent is playing Graveyard Hate, but this deck doesn't die to Graveyard Hate, unironically, because we have other ways to win. So even if they play Graveyard Hate against you, Snapcaster can still sometimes just be a 2-1, and that's enough to win the game sometimes. Sometimes I just cast them out and then just start swinging in. dealing damage, chipping away my opponent, starting the clock basically. And if your opponent can't deal with all your interaction, all your counter spells, then they'll just instantly die to, well, eventually die to Snapcaster or something else. All right. To round off our counter spells, we're actually playing something, quite weird, right? So we're playing 3 Archmages and 1 Force. So the popular card right now is, I think, Stock Up. So basically, Stock Up is kind of like your cheaper Memory Deluge. You look at top 5, add 2 to your hand. So Stock Up is pretty good. What I don't like about Stock Up is that you have to tap out. Granted, Stock Up works better with Force of Negation because you can Stock Up, grab a Force, grab, whatever. But still, I don't like tapping out unless I'm ready to push. When I'm ready to feel confident in doing the damage. So Archmage Charm still, I think, has been basically gone, right? Because it's very harsh on your mana base. But because I've been playing the heavily blue control decks for a long time, I found it still pretty easy for me to cast. Like, haven't really run into many games where it's completely dead. So I've been playing Archmage over the Stock Up. Still fetches you cards that you need. Draw 2 cards. It's granted it's the worst of the draw cards in terms of you're getting a random 2 cards. You have no control over that. You're not looking at the top 5 or top 7. It's also weak to Bowmaster, but I like its flexibility in the fact that you can just hold it as a counter spell if you think your opponent is about to combo off or something like that, or if you're playing against a non-combo deck and they aren't playing any sort of Bowmaster or anything like that, then you can just draw 2 cards. If they're playing any 1 CMC cards like maybe Amulet, or they're playing Dragon Chandler or Ragavan or something like that, you can always take control of that, or Souls, Guided Souls. So I think Archmage, even though it's kind of expensive, kind of mana intensive in terms of blue, I found out that, this last couple of times I've been playing, it's still just just as good of a card. It's definitely better in the pure blue-white control. There's a very higher chance of you always being able to cast this. But I built my mana base around the fact that I'm playing Archmage Charm, so I never really had an issue casting it. And yeah, so let's go on with the rest of the deck here. We also got 3 Phlages. I didn't want to play 4 because sometimes it gets kind of cloggy. It gets cloggy against decks that are comboing. Like, this card's not going to do against anything against Belcher. It's not going to do anything against, Neoform. So there's a lot of combo decks still kind of floating around, so I didn't want to max out on this. But every time I did resolve this or did get this on the board and start the clock, it's really good. But you just have to be very careful as to when you want to cast this, when you want to start putting in the damage. Generally, I wait to get Arena of Glory. That way I know I have a good shot of just one-shotting my opponent that turn. So if not, you can just gradually build the damage up. You can put out Solitudes, you can put out Snapcasters, just swing in here and there, and they're not going to be blocking it, and they don't have really good removal. So as long as you start the clock, Phlage is just a good way to kind of finish it with either direct damage by just casting for 3 mana, or just 4 mana. You still do 3 to 6 damage over the time span. So yeah, also the fact that it gives you life heal on damage, which is nice. Keeps you in the game, just keeps you going. So yeah, Phlage, fantastic card. As for the Planeswalkers, I know a lot of people cut out Planeswalkers in this particular deck, of course, right? They're not as strong as they used to be, but in the games that I have played, and I have resolved quite a few of my Planeswalker, actually. I at one point resolved both Jace and Teferi at the same time, and just kept digging and digging through my deck until I eventually got a Phlage and Arena just to kill my opponent off. But yeah, Teferi, I think 2 to 3 copies probably fine. Jace, you don't have to play. I still like him right now just because he's a decent engine. If your opponent doesn't kill him, it just really depends on what deck you're playing against. If you're playing against a deck that's playing Bowmaster, you probably want to be taking out the Jace. But Otherwise, if you can resolve Jace, you just kind of fix your hand every single turn. I almost never plus him. I always brainstorm whenever I have the opportunity. And then Teferi, I resolved him pretty much every time I resolve him, I've won. Because he just sits there and just keeps drawing me cards and allows me to play Flage, allows me to do stuff like that and still have interaction mana for the turn after. So that's what I like to do is like maybe I'll get the Flage in the graveyard by surveilling him or casting him once before, get him to the graveyard, or even if I haven't even casted him, right? If I still have him in hand, if you can get out Teferi on the board, before you do that, so you can do Teferi, cast Flage. That way, Flage only costs 1 mana, technically, and that way you'll still have mana open for your opponent's turn to counter them. And then going back to your turn, you'll be able to cast the Flage, get him on the board for 4 mana, or escaping him or whatever. And then you still uptick, draw a card off of the Teferi, and then you'd be able to attack, deal damage. And then you have counter magic up for their turn, which makes it very hard to deal with, right? So they have to either deal with the Flage or they gotta deal with Teferi or Jace or whatever. And so yeah, so it's my experience so far is the Planeswalkers do put in quite a bit of work, and not a lot of people respect Planeswalker anymore because they are fairly expensive for what they do, right? And they can easily be removed, but based on my findings so far that they're actually kind of hard to remove. A lot of decks can't remove Planeswalkers unless they're playing like direct damage like Galvanic or Flage or Bowmaster or something like that where they can just flash it in and try to kill it. But for the most part, your Planeswalkers are relatively safe as long as you also have counter magic and you also have interaction in terms of creature removal like Solitude. That way you can kind of protect your Planeswalkers. So yeah, I think they're still decent. If anything, like I said, if you don't like the Planeswalker, you can cut out the big ones. But I still recommend at least the 2 small Teferis and 1 big Teferi. You could cut out Jace or maybe even play just 2 Dominaria. But yeah. And then finally, I think we just have the 4 Solitudes and the 1 Lords Revealed here. Not much to really say about that. They are free in some sense, so it's good free interaction there. For my mana base, hasn't changed all that much. I do want to find more ways to get out white mana right now, just in case we're playing against Blood Moon, but we still have basically 10 fetches. You probably want the blue-white fetch if you're playing more of a traditional Jeskai build. Then you'll want more blue-white, white-red fetches, which I forgot the name of them. It's kind of just, forgetting them right now. But either way, since my deck is playing Archmage, I designed the mana base to always fetch blue. So that's why we're playing so many of the blue fetch lands and not much else. As for the fetchables here, so let's just take a look at it. It's going to be a little weird here. So we have the 1 Red Green Trinome, the 2 Hollow Fountains, or the 1 Archive, and let's just put this away for now. So, and then with the triple Steam Vents and Thundering Falls. All right, so why does the mana base kind of look like this? It's a little weird, right? So let me pan this over a little bit and show you the rest. Then we also have a couple basics here, just 2 of each. 1 Mystic and 1 Arena. So at first I was playing 2 tap lands, which I didn't end up, or 2 Trinomes for the Prismatic Ending, or if I was playing Leyline Binding, I would play more Trinomes. But I took out those. So what I found was that generally you want about 6 sources of red. So right here is my 6 red sources. We got the Arena, triple Fountain, and 1 Thundering Falls, and 1 Trinome. What you could do is you could maybe take out the Trinome and play another Thundering Falls. That way we always have access to the red source there. Then up here is basically just kind of like my white sources up here, right? So we have like 6 or 7 white sources. So 7 white sources, 6 red source, and then everything else is just blue. So we have a bunch of also blue sources here. Okay, so yeah, so that's the thing. So you could play more Surveil lands if you like. You could play Elegant Parlor. You could play Sacred Foundry as the Shark land, but because I'm playing the Archmage Charms, I wanted to basically make every single fetchable land I have here that are not basic be able to play for blue. So, and I couldn't really figure out any other red and blue lands that were not tapped, because at first I was playing 4 tap lands and that kind of felt bad. Sometimes I open up to the like two tap lands and it just kind of sucked. So I wanted to minimize opening up too many tap lands, so I'm just gonna keep it at 3 right now. So, and then, you know, obviously this is not optimal, right? This Trinome, not many people even bother playing this Trinome in this particular deck, but I thought, okay, well, if I want color fixing, I guess this, you know, I'd fetch for this Trinome and this will fix most of my color issues, which it did. When I needed it, it kind of did. Kind of just fetch it in and not worry about it. And then obviously the Surveil lands are, you know, super broken. They're really good. Some of the best lands ever printed. But yeah, so I played one of each. I was thinking either bumping up Archives to 2 or bumping Thundering Falls to 2, maybe cutting the Trinome if that's the case. But right now, I kind of like where it is. It worked out pretty well for me. Never struggled with not having the colors I needed. So it was fantastic. Obviously the 4 basic is quite a lot for a 3 color deck, but I felt like they were necessary to play against Blood Moon. Blood Moon still being my worst enemy of, you know, all time. So the planes, obviously, to get any sort of white source so we can deal with the potential Blood Moon. So if you get 2 of them, you can use Wrath. If you get 1 of them, you can use maybe Celestial Purge if you side that in, or you can use Prismatic Ending plus an island and a mountain to wipe out the Blood Moon. So, or you can even play Teferi, a 3-mana Teferi with a plains and an island and bounce the Blood Moon. So definitely 2 plains is great. And then 2 islands too. Sometimes you just need to fetch into a untapped source of blue mana and not take the damage. So I did like the 2 islands. Plus, you can also use Lauren's Reveal to search one of these out too. So it's kind of nice. So they basically helped me play under Blood Moon. And that's how I basically out Blood Moon. I used Aether Gust to out the Blood Moon, Teferi to out the Blood Moon, and then just kind of, you know, go from there. And then he never was able to resolve another Blood Moon after I cleared the board of it. So, but yeah, I'm not playing any Mountain. 2 reasons, right? One reason is that none of my fetch lands can fetch the Mountain. The only fetch land that can do it is Scar and Tarn. And I'm only playing 1 copy, so I'm not gonna put in the Mountain. I don't really need red. If the only time you might run into trouble is if they Harbinger you, but the Harbinger is worse than Blood Moon because, like, you can just Solitude the Harbinger. You can easily kill the Harbinger, and you don't really need red sources to win the game. As long as you got some bit of white and blue, you can just still win the game normally, even under Harbinger. Where Blood Moon, if they convert your entire deck to red, it's a lot more difficult because only Galvanic and the Flage uses red. So definitely, I think we don't need the plains as much. Or sorry, not the plains, the mountain. So we just went with the 4 basics here. And I ran into a couple decks that snipe out basics. I forget the one deck I was playing. Oh, it was Orzhov Midrange, I think was the deck I was playing against, which was playing the card that kept trying to snipe my lands to, you know, get me fetch the basics. So yeah, it's nice to have like 4 basics in the deck just for those situations. And I find these 2 for my particular build the best basics to play. All right, let's go into side deck real quick. So side deck's a little outdated, but it actually worked quite well for me. So I've one Surgical, one Stone of Elrich, or E-Rich, I guess, triple Consign. Let's just talk about this real quick. So Surgical, I sided in a couple of times against the combo decks. Sometimes I'm trying to hit their pieces in their graveyard, or if I just need information, if I need to know what I'm preparing for, it's kind of like a thought seize. You just hit something in their graveyard. Doesn't matter what the hell you hit. Then you get to look at their hand, and then that way you can kind of navigate your next couple of turns. Is it safe to play Flage? Is it safe to play out a I don't know, a Planeswalker and tap out? So that's what I'm using this extraction namely for. Is just information. And sometimes graveyard hate, you know, if you're playing against another escape deck, you're playing against another Flage, and yes, hitting their Flage is very good. But namely what I used it for was just information, maybe sometimes hitting a combo piece here and there. It's not really super necessary, but it also works well with Snapcaster. You can go snap, hit another card. I used it against Neoform. Like I went first turn, just hit him, checked his hand, and then next turn I hit him with Snapcaster and this, and then I was able to get rid of one of his flip lands, you know, because that was one of the cards in the graveyard, so I ended up hitting that. But I was able to kind of shuffle his deck too, because he surveilled land, right? Surveilled twice, you know, dumped the first card, and then he surveilled and checked his top card. He kept it on top, so I was like, okay, that card must be important, must be piece of his combo. And I looked at his hand; he had like double Veil of Summers, and he had Alms Chant, all that stuff. I just happened to go hit him with this thing, and then he just shuffled his deck, and got, you know, basically he drew nothing next turn, and just bought me time to assemble like more counterspell, assemble my board to kind of start a clock on him. So that's what I use it for, right? So if used correctly, I think Surgical can be a pretty good card. Incorrectly, if you're just firing this thing out without any game plan, then yeah, it's kind of a bad card. But make sure you know what you're doing first before you fire it. But yeah, it's an interesting card. It's takes a bit of deck knowledge and just navigation to kind of work out there. Anyways, what we have, what we got here, what else do we have? The Stone here never really sided in, but it's just graveyard hate, and also it's good against Flage and other things like that. If you keep this on the board, they just, you know, they try cast Flage, it just gets exiled once it dies. And then, yeah, not much else to say about that. It's kind of like a mini one-sided rest in peace, so that's kind of nice. Consign, obviously, just not much to really say about Consign here. Just a really good card. Aether Gust sided in quite a few times, and it did wonders. Against Blood Moon, I drew it, you know, against Blood Moon, and this card kind of solves Blood Moon for me for just 1 blue mana. You could play Celestial Purge instead if you wanted to. I find I didn't really care for Celestial Purge. This card also works well against Titan, works well against any deck that is playing Cavern of Souls. Being Cavern of Souls is like your worst card that you're going to be playing against. If you can't counter their creatures, you're doomed, right? So this card is pretty good against that, good against Titan, good against Blood Moon, good against Veil of Summers. A lot of combo decks are green, like against Neoform. If they cast Neoform, you can just go Aether Gust to Neoform, and they can't veil it. So yeah, it's one of those cards that is underrated, I think, but still proven very useful throughout the years I've kept it in my side deck, and I've always liked the card. Okay, next card. Hollow Moonlight is an old card. It probably can be replaced with something else. I just kept it in here. Ended up working really well for me against both the Belcher deck and the Neoform deck, or even against the Goblin deck with Aether Vial. You can kind of like just cuck them. So against the Goblin deck, he tapped Vialed. I just went Hollow Moonlight, drew a card, and then he decided not to put anything in, which is fine. But what happens is it stuns them for that turn. If they're not able to Aether Vial on the end of your turn. They have to Aether Vial on their turn, which makes it even worse. And then he Aether Vialed on his turn. My turn, I just board wiped it with the Wrath of the Sky. So that's why I used this against the red Belcher deck. He cast the dragon that had Storm. I think he stormed like twice or something like that, 2 or 3 times or something like that. I go Hollow Moonlight, so all he's left with is just a 4/4. All the Storm copies basically just get exiled. So yeah, that worked out pretty well. Against Neoform, he had like double Veil of Summers, Orm's Chance. So he starts his turn, he goes Orm's Chance, or Orm's Charm. I forget the name, but basically your opponent can't cast spell once it resolves. So I go Hollow Moonlight, and then that's all I play. Because I had a bunch of counter spells, but what am I do? I'm like, if a counter Orms, he'll Veil me, and then we'll still lose the game, right? So Hollow Moonlight plays under Veil, which most combo decks have a hard time dealing with, like what you call it, creativity. At one point, creativity usually use Veil to protect their combo. But if you Hollow Moonlight them, then yeah, there's not much they can really do, right? Same thing with Living End. This card was really good against Living End. It used to be pretty good against Rhinos too. So while those decks that cheat out things aren't as popular as they once were, there's still quite a few decks that still, especially at locals, you'll run into a bunch of decks that are trying to just play unfair Magic, and Hollow Moonlight kind of keeps that game fair. So it's an outdated card. You could definitely replace it, but I still end up just keeping it in my deck just because, if I run into those kind of weird decks, this card, there's really no good answer to this card other than if they're playing counter Magic. They have to play counter Magic to stop this card. Because once this resolves, for the rest of their turn, they're not doing anything. They just basically have to pass turn. If you play Yu-Gi-Oh, then this card is similar to like a Droll and Lockbird, or I don't know, a Maxi or something like that, where you play it and then they have to either just pass turn or try to play really, really badly. And then yeah, so I think for just 2 mana, and the fact that it replaces itself, which is nice, so it's never like bad just to stun your opponent for 1 turn and you draw. So I mean, really good value for just a 2 mana card, especially if your opponent's deck hinges on cheating out those weird creatures. So yeah, my Neoform opponent never got out Gristlebrand. He just couldn't ever resolve anything he wanted. So yeah. All right, and then we have 1 Ashiot, just another graveyard hate. Mill yourself, 4 cards. Your opponent can't fetch. Not much to really say about it. Hard to remove, honestly. If your opponent doesn't have any creatures on the board or any sort of hard removal, then if you resolve him, sometimes he'll just win you the game. I haven't really played against any deck that I needed to side him in, but yeah, he's there. All right, last off we have a Verdict, 2 Salty, and Obsidian Call. Verdict, just another 4 mana uncounterable, blow up the board in case you need it. Didn't really need to side in all that much. I think Rafferty does everything I need it to do, but should you play against something like Merfolk, or you're playing against maybe Spirits, then yes, Verdict, you're probably going to need that to clear their board because they're going to have a counter Magic. So the 1 Verdict there. Subtlety, just, any deck that is playing Caverns, I hate. So Subtlety is just there to play against Cavern decks, mostly. And yeah, it works out pretty well for the most part. I hard cast this thing quite a few times. That, and it's still a decent body, 3/3 with flying in the air. Your opponent's got to deal with this thing, or they are eventually gonna die to it. Obsidian Crawl, or Sharmar here. Haven't really sided him in, but he has a potential to be sort of a really good card against any deck that plays maybe Urza Saga, Ugin's Temple, or sorry, I forget, one of the Ugin lands, or Eldrazi, or Urza, the Urza lands. So yeah, basically, or Cavern of Souls, even if you want to just blow up a Cavern of Souls. This card does it all. Haven't really sided him in because I never felt like I needed to, but he is there in case you do play against those decks that produce a lot of colorless mana. He'll do short work of that. All right, guys, that's basically it for the deck. I know this video is a little long, longer than I expected, but just want to give you guys an update on the deck and how it's functioning. It worked out really well. I 2-0'd most of my opponent. The only time I really lost was against Bleecher and against Orzhov, because I think he just hit my lands. Or game 2, I just couldn't deal with his board, and he just kind of overran me with his weenies. But other than that, like the rest of the games felt really good. Never felt always felt I was mostly in control, right? So that's the nice thing about this particular deck is you have good removal, good counter spells, and you have basically good answers to anything your opponent might have. The draw power in the deck is a little bit weaker without the ring, without Memory Deluge or stock up. The draw power is a little bit weaker, but you have the versatility of Archmage's Charm, which is nice. Being able to just steal cards or just draw 2 when you feel like you need to. But yeah, other than that, yeah, it's been a fantastic deck otherwise. Can't say much else other than that. Would like to keep playing with it, get more practice in. Maybe I'll eventually go back and do an RCQ or something like that. But yeah. Anyways, guys, that's it. We'll see you guys next time. If you have any questions, comments, leave them down below. Peace.